Cain and Abel dynamic. I've talked about this subject before, and I have used it. I was going through one of my books, the first one I wrote, Practical Guide to Meditation and Prayer, and it's a fuller explanation is found in it's the last chapter of that book. But it's the story that we find in the Old Testament is it demonstrates or expresses a spiritual dynamic that is very helpful to us when we understand it, when we get how it's working in our life. And so much of the Bible, if you can take it two ways, you can take it literally, you can try to take it historically, try to put it in historical context, and to a certain degree this is possible. But what you have to remember is that the early writers were not real interested in, they were not historians, they were more evangelists. They were more interested in conveying spiritual ideas using history. And so what you find is they'll use a grain of truth, a grain of history, historical truth, and they will elaborate on it and always bring God into the picture to see how God worked in that particular situation. And this is not in any way demeaning to the Bible. It's to understand how they did it, how they wrote it, how they used it, how they thought of history. And the early Hebrew always thought of God as acting through them and through various people and land and the circumstances that were unfolding. And the Bible was written always after the fact. It was never contemporary. Like we turn on the news today, we know what's happening in Italy or wherever things are happening all over the world. We know almost instantly that what's going on, at least some facet of what's going on. But back then that was not the case. It was always by word of mouth that things were passed on, and through gossip and hearsay. And that doesn't make it necessarily any less, but you have to remember that when you're reading a story, particularly an Old Testament story, well, all of them actually, Old and New, that you are not reading a current writer. You're reading someone who wrote many, many years after the fact and used that fact to elaborate and to they embellish the historical aspect of it to get a spiritual concept across. Now, what I want to do today is not necessarily try to understand what they were trying to say, to pick up on the spiritual principle they were talking about, but to take this story of Cain and Abel, to look at the action, look at the activity that is going on in it, and see how it relates to our consciousness. Because what we always find, if we have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, is that the characters there are really us. They're aspects of our own consciousness. And the stories tell something that's very helpful if we see it in that perspective. And I think you'll have a better understanding of what I'm talking about after I am done today, I hope. But Cain was a farmer and Abel was a shepherd, just to give the historical aspect of the literal aspect of the story. And they both brought the fruits of their labors to the Lord and made the sacrifice. That's what this painting is supposed to depict. And the Lord rejected Cain's. He was the farmer, rejected his offering and accepted Abel's. And Cain got angry and he ended up killing Abel. So the mark of Cain. Cain was sent to the land of Nod, which means to wander, as a result of that. And it just doesn't seem fair when you think about it. Why would the Lord accept one offering and reject another? So Cain was a farmer, the one whose gift was rejected. He was the farmer. The farmer stays in one place, plants his crops in defined areas, making his location at any given time predictable. Cain represents that tendency in us to seek out the familiar, set up predictable routines, and hope nothing comes about to disturb our world. Do you have a Cain in you? Nobody? You don't have to raise your hands. Well, you can if you want to, so we'll all know. But Cain represents that tendency. That's the farmer, one place, fences. I know where I'm going to be tomorrow. Routine. Think routine. Think habit. Habitual. We all have that. Have you ever had your routine upset? And what we will often do is pray that our routine is put back in order. So that's Cain. That's where Cain's coming from, that level of consciousness in us that is trying to put life into a certain place and trying to keep it that way so it won't be disturbed. Abel is the shepherd. A shepherd must constantly be on the move, changing the location of his flock so his sheep will not overgraze the land. Abel represents that part of us that is on the move, growing, indefinable, and changing. Do you have that part in you too, Abel? You like to learn new things. You're interested in new information. There's maybe a PBS series on something you've never seen before, and you want to be involved in it. You want to learn something about it. And I'm always picking up something and learning. It's exciting to me. I wish I had that same interest when I was in school, but I didn't. Just like it was forced on you, and so you have this Cain reaction. I don't want to change. I don't want to do what I'm told. But on our own, most of us like to learn. We like to expose ourselves to new things. So one side of us, the Cain side, is that consciousness we're trying to perfect. We're trying to get it just so. It's that self-image that we are trying to build and then put it out in the world and interact with the world from that point of view. Everybody knows who we are and how we're going to react. If we do anything outside of that box, people are surprised, and we hear that kind of thing all the time. I didn't know that he was up to that or whatever. But we like that stability, that sense of stability, and yet it's really not stable because it can be threatened by just about anything that comes along. So there is this other side in us that is not in that place. It is the spiritual nature, the soul. It is very fluid. It is very easily expands. When you get into a problem of some kind and you're just worried to death over it, if you give it time to let it unfold, pretty soon your Abel side comes out. That part that is not fixed in a particular outcome. And it is able then to see the problem from a higher perspective. That's the Abel side. And the reason Cain's gift was rejected by the Lord, don't think of a person being rejected. Think of a state of consciousness that doesn't work in the grand design of the human being. There are many people on this planet trying to keep things exactly as they have always been. And probably all of us are in that category at some point. And I think of the religious upbringing we may have had, and that is a very important thing to keep it the same. I love to to tell the story, the same old story, it'll be my theme and glory, that song we used to sing in the Baptist church. To tell the old story. But to stay in that old story it goes against the expansive nature of the soul. And so all of us here, probably, felt that confinement, the theological confinement. And we had questions that there were really no good answers. We may have heard just, you have to accept it in faith, but there was no logical answer. And so something in us said, this is too small for me. I don't know what I'm looking for, but this is too small. It doesn't fit. Maybe it fit at one time, but it no longer does. That's Abel. But more importantly, it is the divine aspect of us, that ever-expanding quality in us that does not want to be confined. I've told you about, catching a grasshopper in your hand. And what is the one thing on that animal's mind when it's in your hand? There's only one thing it thinks about, and I know this is true. I know how grasshoppers think. You can tell by how they act. They spit tobacco on you, so you let them go. Their one concern is to be free, is to be let go. And we are exactly the same. This is true of all of nature. It's true of every human being. And yet we confine ourselves in a Cain mentality, one that wants to keep everything the same, so we'll be happy. We think if we can keep it the same, we'll be happy. I don't have to worry. It's predictable. But we find that happiness is not in keeping things the same. It is in expanding. And I'm not saying that we want problems just for the sake of having problems, because we need some kind of a challenge to push us out of our ruts. But that's why the Lord rejected Cain's gift. His gift represents, let's keep everything the same. And the Lord is saying, that's not how you're created. You are created to be on the move, to be open and receptive. Because every time we arrive at some understanding of something, there's always another horizon. I think that's the symbology of the very earth we live on. Have you ever reached the edge of the horizon? When we go back to Missouri and Kansas, there's some areas that, of course, are very flat. And you can see like maybe a silo or something miles away on the Kansas plains. And it looks like it's the edge of the earth. You can't see past that. It looks like the earth just drops off. But pretty soon you reach that silo, and what do you see then? You see another horizon. So we think in those terms. Cain thinks in those terms. When I get to that silo, I will be at the end. I'll be happy. I'll be satisfied. And so we get there and we're not satisfied. We're disappointed. Other things happen along the way, and it just changes the whole projection of how we think it all is going to go. And we think it's just not, something's not right here. And so we feel sorry for ourselves for a little bit, and then pretty soon we look up again and, oh, there's another horizon, another silo. So I'm going to go to that one, and I'll be happy. That's kind of how you think when you're driving across Kansas. How many of you have driven across Kansas? It's quite a drive. I actually enjoy it because I don't have to think. You just point the car in a direction and it goes. No, it's really a pretty place, but it's quite flat compared to what we're used to here. But that's how we think, I just will get to another place, that's Cain. I'll get to this other place and then I'll be happy. I don't have to change. I'm going to stay the same, but I'm going to get to that other place, staying the same, and I'm going to be happy. That's going to help me change. And we get there and we find, what did we bring with us on that trip? Who showed up at that silo? We kind of brought ourselves along also, didn't we? That same Cain self that's not real happy with life as it is. So the Lord rejects that, and I'm speaking literally, but in a spiritual sense, our soul rejects that. It rejects what we're trying to do. We're trying to set everything in a certain order so we don't have to worry about it. We'll be at peace. We'll be happy. And we do that. We do succeed. We reach the silo and we say, yeah, that was a goal and I've achieved it. Why am I not happy? Why am I not feeling fulfilled? Oh, there's another silo. I didn't see that. So we go on to another thing and we keep doing that. And we go a whole lifetime. We can go a whole lifetime doing that. And many people, I think, do. And it's always something more, something bigger. I've got to get more, more, more. And the more I get, the happier I'll be. And actually, we can observe our society and just say the wealthier class. Do they look any happier than most of us? It doesn't seem that they are. The drug thing is rampant. Alcoholism is rampant. It's not that everybody that has money is doing that, but it has nothing to do with money. It has to do with what you think money will do for you. If you think it'll make you happy, that's the Cain side. And money is a good thing, but it does not replace the soul. It doesn't replace what we want to unfold from within. It's a tool that we use, and it's a very important tool. We have to have it in this society. If we live in a society that doesn't use money, then we trade sheep or we trade something. But there's always some way to measure that level of wealth. And money is a good thing. It's a universal thing that is in itself. As Paul said, it's not money that's the root of all evil. It's the love of money. That is, thinking it will give me fulfillment. When I reach that silo, I'll be happy. But I'm still moving. I'm still going. And I'm not happy. So what's wrong? Another silo. So we have a reluctant prayer. We may be praying for a condition to change so we don't have to. And that's the important thing. That's where Cain is. I want change, but I don't want to change. I don't want to have to change. I don't want to have to dig any deeper in myself. That's Cain, and the Lord says, no, no, no. That's not how it works. If you want change, you must, as Gandhi, was it Gandhi said, be the change. Was that Gandhi? I guess it was. I'll say it was. You guys don't know the difference, so that's good enough. I think it was Gandhi. You want some unusual circumstance to go away so you can get back to living your life as usual. Cain. I've got my fences. What's the weather going to do? I don't know, but let's pray for good weather. Let's keep everything the same. And so we become reluctant to look at ourselves. We don't look at ourselves. What in me needs to change? Nothing. I'm fine. The problem is there. It's out there someplace. As soon as I get that fixed, I'll be okay. When you pray for change, you may be presented with an opportunity to change, an undesirable development that you don't want. Now, that's a possibility. And when it happens, if it happens, and I'm not projecting anything for anyone, but this is how our prayers are answered. We are pushed into a situation where we have no choice but to change. And we may go kicking and screaming like the little dog pulling against the leash. But the leash in that case is a good thing. It is a prompting. I want greater freedom. But the leash keeps me from running out in front of cars. It keeps me from doing a lot of things. We're on a kind of a divine leash where we're actually being guided whether we like it or not. And so we're praying for something to change, and we're provided with a situation that maybe we have to change. We have to look at ourselves. And so if we get on with that, it's fine. You can be backed up to a wall, not know what to do for weeks, months, a long time. And then pretty soon something in you opens up. You find your center of power. And you look at that same problem from a completely different way. And what's happened is you have risen out of that confinement of the Cain mentality. Your gift then is acceptable to the Lord. Whatever you do will succeed when you're doing it from your center of power. The situation will work. I don't care what it is, if you are in a situation where you feel smaller than that situation, you're in the Cain mentality. And you can give all kinds of rationalizations as to why you do feel smaller and why you actually are smaller than the situation, that you don't have the power to do anything about it or to overcome it or to deal with it in any way whatsoever. So if you're willing to say, this is true of me, I am less than this thing, that's the Cain mentality. And that gift is not acceptable to the Lord. Because the Lord is saying, no, that's not how I created you. I created you with a spirit of love and power and success. You've just forgotten. And so here we are saying, I can't do this thing. This thing's bigger than I am. I don't know what to do. I need help. I need to get to that silo before I'll be happy. And the way this universe works, it is responding, that's not what you need. You have what you need. You are what you need. And so something in you has to click to say, I am greater than this thing. That which is in me is greater than that which is in the world, as 1 John says. And sometimes you just have to be pushed so far down that it angers you, that you allow yourself to do that, that you are, it's almost a level of self-disgust. How did I let myself get here? I'm not going to do this anymore. You make a decision to stop trying to keep things the same so that little self could be safe. That's the Cain and Abel dynamic. One side of us wants to keep everything safe. The other side is saying, but I'm greater than this. There's more to me than this. And so you pray for some change, and the change that comes is the universe is pushing Cain's buttons. It's pushing on Cain and saying, you're not the answer here. It's Abel's gift. It's Abel that is the way. So Cain slays Abel, and we do this sometimes. We do get to the silo and pretend like we're going to be happy. But then something else happens. Another son is born. Seth, the supplanter. So you can't stop this process, in other words. You can deny the process, but you can't stop it. You can try as hard as you want to keep things the same so you'll be safe. but the universe won't let that happen. Even if you slay Abel, Seth will come along and take his place. In other words, it never ends. From that level, the story makes perfect sense, to me anyway. Every challenge has something of value if you're open to it. The value may be as simple as letting go of a negative emotion, proving to yourself that you do have a choice about how you feel. If you've got something going on in your life now, and I've had several things this week that were pretty interesting, and I was kind of having a Cain reaction to one in particular. And somewhere along the way, Abel woke up and said, "Why are you reacting this way? You don't have to do this." And as soon as that change occurred, something happened in me where I felt like this will be resolved. And it is resolved. And it's like it's always been there. The power that we deny has always been there. But in the Cain mentality, we can't see it. So this is a helpful reminder, I think, of the dynamic of living life. You got something that looks bigger than you? No, it's not. It's bigger than how you're defining yourself at this moment, Cain. It's not bigger than Abel. And so what we want to do is encourage Abel to step forward. And if he doesn't step forward, Seth will come forward. And that's you. It's your deeper self. Does that make any sense? Okay.
You've been watching a talk presented at the Unity Church of Grand Junction by Reverend Doug Bator. We would like to thank everyone who joined us here today in beautiful Grand Junction, Colorado, as well as those of you who are joining us online. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to our channel. Also, please feel free to share this video with anyone you think might be interested or benefit from this message. If this video brought value to your life, please consider making a donation by clicking the link below to our PayPal donation account. Thanks again so much for watching.